Well, hello and welcome to the Terri Cole Show. I'm your host, Terri Cole, which I guess you figured out by now, and I'm super excited about today's episode where I'm going to be talking about how to become shameless. Why do we want to become shameless? All right, you guys get it. It's a bit of a play on words, right? Become shameless. But really, I'm talking about guilt and shame today and how those emotions can be shifted and changed and how they really can negatively impact the quality of our lives, and they can also propel us to do good. So let's break it on down. Most of you know Brene Brown talks pretty extensively about this, and if you don't know, you should look her up immediately because she's amazing. But she's been talking for years, since 2012, 2011. She's been talking about shame, and a lot of her stuff is around vulnerability. But I'm super interested as a psychotherapist for the last 22 years. I've seen so much shame and guilt. And it's not just toxic shame. When we talk about toxic shame, a lot of times there's an implication that we were shamed as children, or that there's something terrible that happened in our childhood that makes us feel monumentally broken. What I want to cover in today's episode is shame and guilt in our everyday life, regardless of basically where it came from. So let's talk about the differences, right? I talked about this a little bit in a video, I think a week or two ago, but talking about what does shame say and what does guilt say? So guilt says, I think I did something wrong, right? So if you do something wrong, you have that feeling of like, oh, I did something. It's a constriction. There's a desire to do something about it, or you're afraid. Shame basically says, I am something wrong. Like something is fundamentally wrong with me, which is very different. So there's lots of ways that shame and guilt can also get out of control in life. And one of the most important aspects that we need to understand about shame and how it lives on, how it just keeps on going. And part of that is through secrecy, silence, and judgment, right? This is what Brene Brown talks about. And actually in my own practice, I've talked about this for many years. What do we say in the rooms? If you're in recovery, then you know that we say, you're only as sick as your secrets. So shame is something that we naturally want to hide. Right? So we need to move into, so there was a study actually that I was reading about that they did with young children, 2-year-olds. And what they saw that the way we relate to shame and guilt, a lot of it, of course, has to do with family of origin, the way we're being raised, even when we're so small. But in this study, which I thought was fascinating, they set up 2-year-old children, and they set up the scenario so that the child would believe they're playing with a toy that they know is the adult's toy in the room. And they set it up so the toy would break. So you had two different responses. You had some children who were more guilt-oriented, but it's almost like there's a separation between themselves and the action. They went and immediately tattled on themselves. They immediately went and said, I broke it. I'm sorry. Some of them cried. Shame kids, the kids who felt ashamed, tried to hide it, averted their eye contact from the adult, and tried to hide themselves, like tried to just get out of the way. So that is a shame response. And now let's think about it in life. When we feel ashamed, what does that make us want to do? We want to hide. We want to crawl in a hole. We want to, there's so much around isolating if we are filled with shame. So let's take it from what creates shame? A lot of things. So we're never going to, even in one episode, 2 episodes, even if I did 10 episodes, I wouldn't cover all of the things that create shame. All of us have the capacity to feel shame. And shame and guilt are considered sort of pro-social human responses. Now, I'm on the fence about the shame part. I'll tell you why. But let's look at how guilt is pro-social. Well, if you do something wrong, and you feel guilty, this means you have a conscience. And I'm not talking about chronic guilt all day long, every day, not like religion-inspired guilt, where you're born and you already have some kind of original sin or something. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our inside our signals are going off that tell us we did something wrong. So now this inspires us. There was a whole bunch of studies done on this. This inspires us a lot of times to want to repair it. So, or also to apologize, to do something to basically alleviate the discomfort that the guilt is producing in us. So that makes it pro-social. There was one study that I was reading about where it's basically saying we could look at shame, and that shame could be shifted into guilt if we were able to understand that doing something wrong is not the same as being something wrong or bad. And if you were habituated, basically, in your childhood, if you were in a childhood home where shame was used to control you, so you're a bad girl or boy, right? Just straight up, that creates shame. So we know with modern parenting, we don't do that, right? Obviously, we say, that was a bad choice. I do not like what you did. That was incorrect. That was insensitive. You hurt that girl's feelings, that boy's feelings, whatever that is. But that is teaching a child that they have a choice, that you can choose the action that makes you feel bad, or you cannot. But when you feel like you're bad because you've been shamed, there's nowhere to go. You're like painted into this corner of, oh, this is just like a forever thing. This is like a chronic and terminal condition, which it is not. And you can sort of tell the difference about guilt and shame, because shame is very self-oriented. We feel bad about ourselves or something we did or something we wouldn't want someone to know that we did, let's say. Where guilt is other-oriented. I feel like I did something, and it could also be if you go against your own values. Let's say you cheat on your taxes, right? But if down deep that really does go against your values, and you kind of were convinced to go along with it because someone else wanted you to, or your accountant said it was okay to, you would have a sense of internal shame or guilt because you went against your own moral compass, basically. But again, we can use the way guilt makes us feel to do something different. So in the end, I'll give you a whole cheat sheet of steps that you can take to get rid of this, but I wanted to give you some more information about it, because it's so much about the right and wrong, right? What is right and what is wrong. And we are in a society that is so incredibly judgmental. Right? What do I say? And what did my teacher, David Simon, used to say? We all walk around all day long, yumming and yucking all over the world, right? I'm on the train. She's got a skirt, and then she's got those boots. I don't think that goes. Yuck, right? Or, ooh, I love her hair. She's got a nice French twist. Yum. Why? Being Judge Judy all day long. Well, why do we not want to do it? Well, it takes you out of yourself. It takes you out of thoughtful time that you could be focusing on you or being creative or something else. But it also blocks understanding, right? It blocks intimacy. When we make someone wrong for what they're wearing or how they're being, it's like we disassociate ourselves. We make them other. And now we are no longer interested in why they are the way they are. And I'm not talking about terribly egregious things. That really is not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about every day, all day. We walk around judging the crap out of other people. I know you do it because pretty much everybody does it. So let's talk about how we can get out of this guilt and shame spiral. And again, there's all these studies that are done on things that can help you in this process. Because what is connected to this is also self-forgiveness. So if we are really punitive with ourselves, then that guilt and shame, we just don't cut ourselves a break. Instead of treating ourselves like a child who is going to make mistakes because they are human beings, we treat ourselves like someone who should be perfect, and we're not, and we're never going to be. So the first thing that I have for you, the first step that you can take to try to get out of this shame and guilt thing, to become shameless, right? As the name of this episode is, the first thing is doing mindful breathing. So, and I'll include the study that I found on it. I just thought it was interesting, and that was really linked to self-forgiveness. That mindful breathing created more space. They just found this in the actual results. That there was more space for people to forgive themselves. So I've told you guys this before, or maybe you haven't seen one of the episodes where I have, where you can get a free app by my mentor and spiritual crush, Dr. Deepak Chopra, and Eddie Rosen, actually, are the two who created it. Eddie is a New York yogi. And it is on your app store, and it is FREE, and you can just go there. It's called The Breathing App. That's it. There's all kinds of information about there, so just do that. 5 minutes a day. See if that doesn't create some more internal space for you to make some changes. Sorry, why are these notices all coming in? I can't see what I'm doing. All right, moving into. First thing is breathing. The second thing I'm giving you is basically a guilt and shame blueprint and inventory. So you'll be able to write down and start to understand what are the things that you kind of feel habitually guilty about or habitually ashamed of, so that we can really target those and get them up and out of the basement of your mind, because it's kind of like a bag of crap or a rotting rodent. No matter how much you clean the main part of the house, if we don't figure out that crap that's in the basement, it's still going to stink in the main part of the house. You get the analogy of what I'm saying? I know you do. The second thing that you can do as you're moving forward is you have to accept responsibility for things where you did make a mistake. The shame of making a mistake makes us just want to run as far away from that experience, the mistake, all of it as possible. But I'm going to ask you to really think about, so you're going to be doing an inventory. We're going to write down things that you feel bad about or things that you feel guilty about. And then we're going to, what would it feel like to just take responsibility, to stop blaming the other people, to stop saying, I don't know why my kid is acting this way. I don't know why this person is doing this, whatever it is, and end up taking responsibility for maybe what you did or didn't do. What is your part in it? Every relationship dance is 50-50, whether you're lovers, whether you're father, son, mother, daughter, friends. There's no other way. It can't be different. You're 50%, the other person is 50%. Even if one person is way more aggressive than the other, you're 50%. Unless you are a minor child, your 50% is how you respond and what you do. So I want you to take responsibility in your own mind. Stop looking at those experiences like that terrible thing that person did to me. I want you to look at it as if you were a New York Times reporter and you were required to get both sides. Then how would that experience look? Would it be as cut and dry as you make it seem or make it feel? Probably not. Most of the times, whenever I do that, I go, okay, I kind of see how the other person got where they got. All right. And again, you guys, I'm not talking about massive childhood, horrible injuries, right? I'm really talking about life, breakups, friendships, work, getting fired, having problems, like just regular life stuff. When the shame part, we are talking about childhood stuff, but right now when we're looking at those relationships and trying to take our 50%, that's really in your adult life. And then the next step is to make amends if it's possible, and to make amends, as we say in the rooms, if doing so would not cause harm to the other person. So if you had an affair with someone who was married, but they stayed together, and 10 years later, you want to go visit them and be like, you know what, can't we all be friends? I'm really sorry. That would most likely disrupt their lives, right? That would most likely do damage. You could maybe send a card simply stating, I'm sorry, or taking responsibility in some other way that you don't necessarily have to do it with the person, because a lot of times the person might already have passed away. You might not have that opportunity to. So, but if you can make amends, and it will not do harm to the other person, and they are still on planet Earth in this incarnation, then I will ask you to do that. So if we move into the real deal about shame itself, the most important piece, and this is the next step, is I want you to talk about it. Whatever it is that is creating this deep well of shame for you, if you have that, talk about it with someone. Talk about it. There is an anonymous something that I read about where you can write in your deepest, darkest, and it goes up on a website, but without your name, obviously. It's all anonymous. And there's something about just being witnessed. I would rather you do it with people you know, if you have anyone that you can trust. Part of it is that we've got to stop hiding it from ourselves. So much of the time, we take on shame for things that are not our responsibility. Look at all the cultures, including the U.S., that shame women of sexual assault. I mean, there are still many countries and cultures that actually think that this means that the woman has brought shame on the family name and they stone her to death. I mean, come on. So no on that. And you have to get real about what is your side of the street. What can and should you own? And what do you need to place squarely somewhere else in your own mind? So the last thing that I want to say about why no secrecy, why we don't want that, is that the brilliant assertion from Brene Brown is that the antidote to shame is compassion, is empathy. And so if we can all start normalizing all of these things that we've done in our lives, that we're ashamed of, we have all done things. I've done things. How could we not? We would be, I don't know who we would be. This is part of the human condition. This is how we learn, right? Hopefully you make mistakes and then you try to go, okay, let me grab some wisdom out of that so I don't have to do that horrendous thing again. Or I tried on being bad or being immoral. I did in my youth. And I was like, yeah, this definitely does not fit. Like, no, I don't like this and I don't want to behave this way and I'm not going to. But, it took me, I had to try it on to see if it fit. And the answer was no. So I think a lot of people have this experience. So let's start talking about these things. Frig shame, because shame can't live. It's basically like you're suffocating shame by being open, by telling the truth about what feels so shameful to you. Even if it's poverty, even if it's having an addicted parent, you don't have anything to be ashamed of, right? We make amends, we change the things we can. But shame, it just serves to keep you in that box of isolation, of really existential loneliness can be a part of this experience because nobody knows us. If we never tell even our closest person, like the darkest part of our heart, the shadow of ourselves, then they don't fully know us. And that's a bummer because if somebody doesn't fully know you, they don't really know you, they don't authentically know, how can they authentically love you? And I'm not saying you have to confess everything, but I'm saying keeping a secret is damaging to you. It feeds shame. What I'm giving you in this little downloadable guide is ways to starve shame, ways to take action, ways to take care of yourself and move towards self-forgiveness. Because this is the only way that you will ever live, as Brene would say, a wholehearted life. And don't you want that? I know you do, and I want it for you. And for those of you who joined my it was not Facebook, it was YouTube. I did a YouTube live show. It was so easy, and oh my God, I loved it so much. We're doing it again, so I don't know when though, so I'm not really announcing it. But soon, we're going to do it in May. Right now, we're doing it once a month, and then as I'm getting closer to Boundary Bootcamp, we will be doing it more because so many more people can join. It's so much easier. Anyway, I loved it. So I want you to write in and tell me what topics. I already have a bunch, but what would you like me to talk about on that live Q&A? It's basically Terri Cole Show live. So I'm taking your questions right then and there, and I'm taking questions that are sent in beforehand. And we had so much fun, didn't we? Those of you who came, it was a ball. So I can't wait to do it again. I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for watching, for listening, and for sharing, because you are it for me, and I super appreciate you helping me spread the TC love all over the world. I really do. I hope you have an amazing week, and as always, take care of you.